Hello everyone, welcome back to Archangel RC after yet another delay. All is good here, but sadly life does have a way of getting in the way. No way around it sometimes. Important thing is I finally managed to finish this video, so let's dive into it. For a long while now I've been testing and reviewing planes that have been made for mapping as FPV rigs. Although that's not really a bad thing, because a fair few people have ended up using them in the same way. I recently got a chance to actually do some mapping with the Flying Dragon. Turns out it's pretty good at that game too. And speaking about being good at your game, I'd like to take a minute to talk about this video's sponsor, PCBWay. As the name would suggest, I thought they did pretty much only PCBs, but it also turns out they do them quite well, with an amazing variation of options for colors, design, layout. They can even design your project for you if you can't. Pretty much anything you can think of, they can do, and not only that, they can also populate them with components, so there is the option not only to get a PCB of your own design, but also to get it ready complete with the components you need so you can put it to work right away. And get this, they also offer CNC machining of custom parts, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, and injection molding services. Ha! Talk about a misleading name. The array of services PCBWay offers is truly remarkable, at least in my mind, and it is all in one place, easy to access and pretty affordable. Definitely looks like the place to help you bring that project you've been putting off to life. Quick and easy. Check them out at their website, pcbway.com, and now let's get back to the mapping stuff. So, long story short, a local town hall wanted a 3D map of the city done, and the company that would be doing the rendering contacted me so we can get the shooting done with one of my planes and speed things up considerably compared to doing it with a drone, since they were on a pretty tight schedule. Since it had to be a 3D map of the city, we needed to fly with a camera angled at 45 degrees forward and one at 90 degrees down for best results of the 3D model in the end. I have done tests with the clouds a few years back, but sadly that one will have a hard time fitting two cameras. Luckily though, the Flying Dragon was more than up to the task, and it did prove itself a pretty good mapping platform during this project. Camera of choice for this project was the Sony Alpha 6000, and I managed to fit two of them in the plane, one angled at 45 degrees and the other at 90 degrees down, and in the process was able to cut down on required flight time by 33%. To allow for repeated mounting in the correct orientations, I printed out a set of pretty basic holders for the cameras, but they did work quite well. Turned out the original Sony batteries were not up to the task of running the cameras for the whole duration of the flight, because the Flying Dragon can indeed stay up there for a good while, even with two cameras on board, which resulted in adding 1,100 grams of additional weight. So to address the issue, and since there wasn't enough time to order those external power adapters because of the short time frame this project had to be finished, I actually modified two of the Chinese batteries they had for the cameras and adapted them to work with a 2S21700 lithium-ion battery with a capacity of 5000 mAh, the same cells I used to make a second flight pack for the Dragon. Flight testing showed that this battery can now power both cameras at the same time for at least 4 hours, which means that it would have enough juice to last the flight. I made two such packs so that there would be a freshly charged one for every flight pack. One of the problems with this project was that the contract was signed literally on the last workday of 2021, and the due date for the completion of the project was the end of January, which was both way too short of a time frame and the worst possible time in the year weather-wise. Luckily, those 21700 Samsung 50G cells were available locally, so I could make a second flight pack and those camera batteries on time, because we wanted to be able to just replace batteries and SD cards upon landing and have the plane start the next flight immediately, without delay, in order to meet that deadline. As you may know from this plane's previous video, it is equipped with a Matek H743 wing, and since there was no time to re-equip it with something more reliable, I was hoping that the dual sensor redundancy would be enough in the unlikely event that something goes wrong. Also, the requirements for this project did not involve centimeter level RTK precision, so we were able to get away with matching photo timestamps with the GPS location and timestamps from the autopilot's logs. Resolution had to be 3 cm per pixel, which in the case of these cameras with the 30mm lenses we had on them required an altitude above the terrain of 230 meters. I am glad to report that the Arduplane terrain following feature for mapping missions does a wonderful job, perfectly adequate for such a project. Upon arrival at location, we were looking for a high ground where we can have a nice overview of the city, and we did find one such location which was quite good for doing a big part of the city. Always good. Other issue was takeoff and landing options. While the takeoff was pretty okay, but because of wind it was always in a direction along the road towards some buildings and lighting posts, the landings on the other hand were a bit more tricky. So basically this is the landing strip. I had to get the plane around flagposts, trees and lampposts without hitting anything, and then on the final approach often had to dodge cars before touching down. It was an interesting experience for sure. All of the landings were done manually by me. Only takeoffs were automated. One time I almost landed in a tree, luckily with a payload of 1250 grams, which includes the 2S lithium-ion battery powering the cameras. The Dragon is at least 6.5 kilograms and has a good deal of mass and inertia to overcome going through a tree. Overall, despite the landing hurdles, there were no accidents, but it is times like these when you really start to see and appreciate the convenience of a VTOL setup, as it would have allowed for 100% automation of landing and takeoff, and we would have not been limited to a location with a landing strip, since takeoff and landings would have been possible from almost anywhere with the 3 or 4 square meters of flat ground, even be it a park in the center of the city. Hauling around all of that VTOL gear will reduce flight time, but at least it will give you the convenience of being able to take off and land near to where the mission needs to happen. On some of the later missions, the plane had to go 5 or 6 kilometers before it will start the mission, and for the very last one we changed locations because it would have had to go 10 kilometers before it can start the mission, so that would be 20 kilometers of distance lost only to get there and back, which could otherwise be used for the mapping itself, which would speed up the work process and allow us to finish sooner. In January the days are pretty short around here, so it was critical that we optimized the missions in order to get as many done as possible within a single day. I know from a friend that the VTOL version of the Dragon can safely fly for around 45 to 50 minutes because it uses the same battery for VTOL and forward flight, and it needs to have enough juice left for the landing. My Dragon, with a much heavier payload, can fly for at least 100 minutes, depending on wind, which is at least twice as much, but does require a takeoff and landing strip, which in some cases is not that easy to find. I do have to say though, apart from the video and radio links crapping out due to the location, the plane and autopilot performed absolutely perfectly. For some reason, Mission Planner routed a few of the paths of the mission right on top of the TV tower, and there are some 10 kilowatt transmitters up there. But the autopilot did not care for it. GPS did not get affected as far as I could see, only the video and radio control had issues due to the area being very high on interference and the occasional OSD blip right on top of the tower. While the plane was flying, I had the car running and was charging the other flight and camera battery duos so that they would be ready to swap in as soon as the plane comes down. By the end, we had this whole procedure so well played out that it took us no more than 15 minutes from landing to the next takeoff, in which time there was the battery swap, SD card swap, new mission loaded and photos checked for being in focus, etc. to make sure we don't have to repeat the same mission if something had gone wrong with the cameras, which actually happened a few times. On a good day, we were able to squeeze in 4 flights from very early in the morning to almost sundown, which is quite a lot for that time of year when the days are shortest. Apart from a few hiccups, cameras were also performing quite good, especially for their price compared to dedicated mapping solutions, which pretty much start at a few $1,000s at least. In a single flight, the plane could cover 2.5 square kilometers in a grid pattern for this mission's requirements, and for the resolution that was needed, this meant 45 meters between passes, which is pretty dense. On average, missions were around 120 kilometers, but since the plane was able to achieve a pretty decent 80 km/h average speed with the APC 11x8 props, it would cover that in under 100 minutes per mission, which was pretty good when the day is short and you need to cover as much area as possible. Weather conditions did not allow us to fly every day, but on a good day we could cover 10 square kilometers in a grid pattern, which is around 500 kilometers traveled for the day. The whole city, along with the overshoots, was around 37 square kilometers, but sadly we were not able to finish it in 4 days due to weather and the occasional failed flight, either due to cameras not being in focus and having to repeat the mission, or for some reason the new mission appears to upload and we end up running the previous one for a bit, at which point time has been wasted. Overall, it was an interesting experience and a lot was learned. As I mentioned before, for the last few missions we changed locations so that we can be closer to the flight areas and we can be done in a day. So we moved to an unused stretch of road in the city's industrial zone, which proved a nice location as well, even if we weren't on top of the city. There were noticeably fewer interfering signals and video and radio links were a lot more stable and reliable. Landing strip was also wider, but a lot dirtier with lots of small rocks. I had to turn the plane upside down after every landing to dump out the rocks and dirt that it picks up while sliding to a stop. But here too, I had to squeeze between flagpoles for the landing, but it was a lot easier and not as risky as the previous location. But I do have to say, this plane is such a pleasure to land. It is so easy. Not sure if it's the weight and size or just something in the design, but it is so easy to make it smooth landing that it gives me pleasure to see it land. Takeoffs are also a breeze even at that weight. Throttle up and just push it with moderate force without having to run and it just goes up. I think the trick is not to push it up, but to try to point it level. Auto takeoff will do the rest. Wings are pretty good and since they do not stall, takeoffs are easy. Add a bit of headwind and it gets even better. As for the end results, here is one section of the city so you can get an idea what the 3D model looks like. It is not as detailed and precise as going around every building and mapping it out with a copter, but doesn't need to be and also is a lot quicker. Also keep in mind this is from a height of 230 meters above the ground. For what they need it for, it will do the job, which is the important thing. If you look right here, you can see the car we were in, 3D modeled along with the rest of the city. You can even see the solar panel on the side there feeding my solar generator, which in turn powered the monitor and chargers for some of the smaller batteries. On the other side you can see the table and you can even see the shadow of the tripod with the antenna tracker on it, although I guess it wasn't bulky enough to be well visible in the photos in order to get 3D rendered. In any case, it is a pretty neat model that is useful for a whole host of things. Takes a while for the full resolution segments to load, it's just that my laptop is kinda slow now, being old as it is, but it still does a decent job. I will leave a link to the company's website in the description below so you can check them out if you wish. My interest has definitely now been piqued by mapping, and I do see the reasoning of a VTOL setup as well, which is the most important thing here, especially as planes get bigger. Who knows what the future holds, but I am now willing to dabble. However, that 4-motor VTOL setup is not safe enough in my mind, does not provide any redundancy in the VTOL stage of the flight, which could end up costing a fair bit to repair in the best of cases. So we'll have to figure something out in that regard. Until then, if you have found this video useful, please like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and also consider commenting or in any other way engaging with it, as it helps it get seen more and helps my channel grow. Using any of the affiliate links in the description below to purchase anything from those websites will help support this channel at no additional cost to you. Another way you can support me is Patreon, the link is also there, and I would like to express my eternal gratitude to all the people who have supported me so far in any way and would continue to do so. I wish you all successful mapping, and I will see you next time.